And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. And what a great day it is in terms of dramatic events surrounding the very controversial President of the United States. There's some international polling about the estimations of President Trump and how he's doing, where he's going, what's going on. It's shocking, frankly. There's also a shocking new bizarre email that President Trump just sent out to his supporters saying he's alone and in the dark. That's what he says. He's not alone and in the dark. He's in the White House. But no, it says he's alone and in the dark, and he definitely needs help. He wants money sent his way. He has a 72-hour countdown clock. We'll give you a full sense of that. Meanwhile, they have raised on a GoFundMe page. This is a whole other front of battle. They have raised over $200,000 so far from 9,000 contributors to pay for money to the Ford production line factory worker who welcomed President Trump when he was visiting Detroit for a speech in Detroit. He welcomed President Trump by shouting at him and calling him a pedophile protector. He has been suspended from his job. And so to replace his job, some anti-Trump sentiments were expressed by a GoFundMe page collecting, well, probably even more than he makes working as part of a factory assembly line with Ford Motors. What goes to this individual whose name is TJ Sabula. We will get to that on the Medved Show as well. And then, also we are on the verge of another war. Tehran has warned its neighbors that it could hit U.S. bases if Washington struck against this evil regime in Iran, which is teetering right now. And meanwhile, American forces in Qatar have been evacuated. This is a serious matter. We're going to be speaking to Daniel Pipes, a founder of the Middle East Forum and a historian, about the historic indications of where we are going regarding the crisis in Iran and that teetering, tottering regime. Meanwhile, I can't resist it, though, because it is so incredibly bizarre. And knowing something about presidential history, I wrote a book called The Shadow Presidents, which was about all of the presidents of the United States from the time that they first had a White House staff formally, which was 1857. But all the presidents since then, no one has handled things quite the way Donald Trump has. In fact, none of our presidents, no matter how embroiled in controversy and difficulty, has ever sent out a message to his supporters saying, I'm alone and in the dark. The story about this latest White House mailing, Donald Trump is all alone in the White House war room, abandoned by his staff, with only a dying laptop to communicate with supporters. At least that is what he claimed in a rambling email to his voters while asking for more donations to stop the radical left from flipping the House and Senate. He wrote in his message to supporters, I'm sitting here alone in the war room fighting for you. Does this inspire confidence? I'm alone in the war room fighting for you. How is he fighting for people alone in the war room? The rest of the staff went home hours ago. It's just me. One dying laptop. and a 72-hour countdown clock to my first mid-month deadline for the year. That's what the email reads. If we don't crush my first mid-month deadline of the year, the radical left flips the House and Senate and finishes what they started. Open borders forever. Your guns confiscated. Your kids brainwashed. Trump went on to say that the worst thing they could do is put his supporters' favorite president through another fake impeachment. And the lettering and the photograph that they send, Trump does look like he is on the point of tears. The email isn't the first time. They point out in Newsweek that Trump has asked for political donations while in office. Last year, he begged for money and said he wanted to get into heaven. I mean, I guess he was worried that as rich as he is, he doesn't have the money that you normally have to pay to St. Peter. Is that the deal? I want to try to get to heaven, the commander-in-chief wrote last year. Last year, I came millimeters from death when that bullet pierced through my skin. My triumphant return to the White House was never supposed to happen. But I believe that God saved me for one reason, and then all in capitals, to make America great again. Trump's new plea for money comes as the administration is facing fury from Americans over ICE in multiple cities. Earlier today, footage emerged of a disabled woman being yanked from her car by ICE agents while driving to the doctor. I'm disabled, she said. I'm trying to go to the doctor up there. That's why I can't move. The woman screamed as the officers smashed her windows, pulled her out of the vehicle in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and cut her seatbelt to drag her away. I don't know what kind of disability she endures, but this probably not the best news in the world for President Trump, given the fact that there's already a hefty majority of Americans who have lost faith in this entire ICE operation. The funding is not evenly divided. The public opinion is not evenly divided in this regard. And meanwhile, concerning the worker at the Ford assembly line who was suspended because he was shouting at Trump and calling him a pedophile protector, they have set up an online fundraiser which has raised more than $200,000 in just a few hours. Please help us raise funds for Patriot TJ Sabula. TJ was suspended from his job at the Ford Automotive Company for correctly calling President Trump, DJT, a pedophile protector. Sean Williams, the organizer, wrote on the page. It comes after the president was touring Ford's F-150 plant ahead of his address at the Detroit Economic Club when a worker yelled, "Pedophile protector," at him, TMZ reported. According to video obtained by the news outlet, Trump appeared to utter an expletive in response and gave the middle finger. So where do we go from here? Do we go to war against Greenland? Against Iran? Or both? And oh yeah, what about Venezuela? We'll get to all of that coming up on the Medved Show. And Dancing in the Dark by Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen, not a favorite of President Donald J. Trump, but he has been dancing, or at least sitting, in the dark, apparently all alone. And that's what his new solicitation for funds seems to say. And that things will get worse for everybody including, of course, President Trump himself, unless people send money. So far, this fundraiser has collected about an additional $1.8 million. He's not doing tremendously well in the fundraising game right now. Meanwhile, at the Ford plant where Trump told a worker to F off and gave him the finger, there's an image of that has been artificially intelligence enhanced, where the finger is larger than his normally petite hands. And the finger is pointing directly toward the screen. And the White House statement on that situation: a lunatic was wildly screaming expletives in a fit of rage. No, I'm not talking about the president there, not that lunatic. This was a different lunatic, and the president, says the White House, gave an appropriate and unambiguous response. All of this is amazing right now. The Hill reports that the United Auto Workers line worker who called President Trump a pedophile protector on Tuesday, yesterday, prompting an obscene gesture from the president, said he has no regrets about the incident. In an interview with the Washington Post after the viral back and forth, 40-year-old TJ Sabula identified himself as the factory worker who shouted at the president. He said he has been suspended from his job pending an investigation. As far as calling him out, he definitely has no regrets whatsoever. Sabula added, however, that he is concerned about the future of his job, and he thinks he's been targeted for political retribution for embarrassing Trump in front of his friends. Speaking of in front of his friends, Greenland has been a great friend of the United States. We still have a major space base there to monitor the flow of any missiles over Greenlandic territory. You know that Greenland is 3 times the land area of Texas? We're talking about a huge tract of land. President Trump posted today on Truth Social. He posted a message about Greenland, of course, and what he said is the United States needs Greenland for the purpose of national security. It is vital for the Golden Dome that we are building. NATO should be leading the way for us to get it. If we don't, and this is all in capitals, Russia or China will, and that is not going to happen. Okay, if we don't get it, Russia and China will, but that's not going to happen. Okay, he continues. Militarily, without the vast power of the United States, much of which I built during my first term, and I'm now bringing to a new and even higher level. Yes, it's because of the addition of Venezuela and becoming now the new acting president of Venezuela, according to changes on Wikipedia. NATO would not be an effective force or deterrent, says President Trump. Not even close. They know that, and so do I. NATO becomes far more formidable and effective with Greenland in the hands of the United States. Anything less than that is unacceptable. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. So while we are spending money to build up military facilities and to acquire land, one hopes without warfare, from Denmark and from Greenland, we are going to be spending money to go after Iran and to try to punish that evil regime for their treatment of the protesting Iranians. And at the same time that we have to prepare for that confrontation. The headline in Wall Street Journal premier says Greenlanders favor Denmark over the USA. Greenland's leader said if his people were asked to choose here and now, they would opt to remain a Danish territory, as they have for 300 years, rather than join the U.S., aligning the Arctic island's position tightly with that of Copenhagen ahead of meetings at the White House today. Greenland's Prime Minister, Jens Frederik Nielsen, said yesterday that despite immense pressure, the island would remain a part of the Kingdom of Denmark and continue to adhere to democracy and the rule of law. Greenland does not want to be controlled by the U.S. Greenland does not want to be owned by the U.S., Nielsen said in Copenhagen alongside Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. The situation is very, very serious. The Danish and Greenlandic foreign ministers will meet a White House delegation led by Vice President J.D. Vance. Oh, that'll go well. Look how wonderfully he performed with Zelensky. Remember that? They will be meeting in an attempt to head off a dispute that threatens to deprive Denmark of an island that accounts for 98% of the Kingdom of Denmark's territory. They don't want to give it up. President Trump's efforts to seize Greenland on an ice-covered, sparsely populated island 3 times the size of Texas has thrown the Scandinavian nation into its deepest diplomatic crisis with the U.S. It has not been easy to stand up to a completely unacceptable pressure from one of our closest allies, said Frederiksen, the Danish Prime Minister. But there's a lot to suggest that the hardest part is yet to come. Yeah, what there is a lot to suggest is President Trump has basically said there's an easy way to do this and a hard way, and we're going to do it the hard way. Really, the same way that he faced a hard difficulty carrying Minnesota 3 times. Why was that so difficult for him? Well, because he didn't carry Minnesota. He lost Minnesota for 3 times. What's going on right now in Minnesota? More on the situation with ICE and its lack of popularity or acceptability for many Americans. That and more coming up on the Medved Show. And on the Michael Medved Show, there were several highlights from President Trump's major speech, speaking to auto workers in Detroit. Where else? And President Trump made a number of extraordinarily strong declarations, and one declaration indicating that maybe he wouldn't be included in the kind of people who actually built our country. Why not? Well, here's President Trump's declaration from Detroit, clip 7.
Our country wasn't built by people who tried to lie and cheat and scam their way to success. It was built by legends like Henry Ford, Henry Dow, Thomas Edison, the Kellogg brothers, Alfred P. Sloan, the founder of General Motors, men who lifted up American workers and strengthened our nation beyond even belief. And we're doing the same exact thing right now. I think we're doing it even better.
We're doing it even better. And it is interesting, of course, the first person he mentions is Henry Ford. He was visiting the Ford Motor Plant. Henry Ford also was publisher of the Dearborn Independent, which was the leading anti-Semitic newspaper in the country, not in the world, because that was a period of time when they had Der Stürmer, the stormer, in Germany. But Trump also found a need in Detroit to attack a favorite target, and a favorite target who at the moment is battling cancer and is retired, but he can't stay away from Joe Biden. This is clip 11.
Every word, when you go up here, you take a big chance, especially me, because I go off teleprompter about 80%. Every word, when you go up here, you take a big chance, especially me, because I go off teleprompter about 80% of the time. But isn't it nice to have a president that can go off teleprompter? Wouldn't you think? Remember the speeches Joe would make? First of all, they'd last a matter of seconds, Thank you very much. You ever notice Joe would always cough before a speech? State of the Union, he gets, ladies and gentlemen. And then it would be like very short. Although the one time they had him spruced up pretty good. Remember, he was high as a kite. He was floating. He was up there way up. That was a bad speech. But, hey, he got through it, He got through it, if you call it getting through. This country was so, can you imagine allowing 25 million people into our country, many of them criminals, many of them murderers?
Okay, the number 25 million people allowed into our country, mostly criminals and murderers. Maybe that's what he means when he talks about how he believes the 2024 election, the last election where he was contesting the presidency with Kamala Harris, that election was rigged in the state of Michigan. Now, there's one problem here. If he believes the election in Michigan was rigged in 2024, then the winner of that election in Michigan, the victory is invalid because President Trump carried Michigan narrowly, but he carried it in 2024. So what is he talking about when he talks about losing or being cheated out of the state of Michigan, which he won? Here's what the rather confused chief executive had to say.
Former Congressman Mike Rogers, who's running for the Senate, and he'll be a great senator, and he's going to be a great senator. He was a great congressman, and then he left. He went on to very big things. He did well, no matter where he was, and I think they took that away from you last time. I'll be honest with you, Mike. I really do. I don't like to get things going. I don't like to be controversial at all. But they rigged the election on you. Mine was too big to rig. You won. I'm telling you, you won, but you're going to do great this time. He's a great guy, actually. He's going to be an amazing senator. Thank you. Thank you for being here, too.
President Trump obviously enjoys making fun of Joe Biden, and he didn't have the chance to run against Joe Biden because Biden had withdrawn, and Kamala Harris was the candidate he defeated. But what's so bizarre is he complained about election fraud in Michigan, and said that in 2024, the election in Michigan was stolen, which means he's not a legitimate president. No, he's legitimate. He won the election, and he won the state of Michigan. So how can he get up there in Michigan and say the election was rigged, which he won? And then another thing that he said, that he actually put on his Truth Social website, is Minnesota is mine. I won it 3 times. Let's see. He ran for president 3 times. He was the Republican nominee for president of the United States in 2016, where he lost Minnesota to Hillary Clinton. It was close, but he lost. And then he had to fight Joe Biden for the presidency in 2020, second time. And he lost Minnesota again. He lost to Joe Biden. And it wasn't particularly close. And then the third time he was dueling with Kamala Harris, and he lost Minnesota again. Now, there's no disgrace in a Republican losing Minnesota. Even Ronald Reagan, that was the only state out of the 50 states that Ronald Reagan lost. He carried everything else. And he lost Minnesota by it was slightly more than 1,000 votes. It was incredibly, incredibly close. But President Trump was never that close. And he didn't win it once. He didn't win it twice. He certainly didn't win it 3 times. So what is he talking about? And then there's this. There's yet more that he put on his Truth Social website. And he put this, that effective February 1st, which is coming right up, no more payments, this is all in capital letters, will be made by the federal government to states for their corrupt criminal protection centers known as sanctuary cities. All they do is breed crime and violence. If states want them, they will have to pay for them. Make America great again. So wait, if he's saying we're not going to be sending any money to states that displease the president, does that mean that those states are not going to be paying any money to the federal government in taxes? Because basically, that's where the federal government gets its money. And isn't Congress, under the Constitution, face some of the responsibility of how federal money is actually spent? And again, this coming at the same day that he is saying that we need to go after Greenland, and if we don't get it the easy way, we're going to get Greenland the hard way. What exactly does that mean? And what about the very tough situation going on with Tehran, with the Iranians now warning their neighbors that they could hit U.S. bases if Washington strikes at them in support of protesters? What is going on? What are the real chances of war with Iran? Daniel Pipes, the principal of the Middle East Forum, joins us coming up on the Medved Show. And it is a great honor and pleasure to welcome back to the show somebody whose work has been so very important to understanding the complexity of all of the various struggles in the Middle East, who right now has been considering the very real possibility of a war between the Iranian regime and the United States of America. Daniel Pipes is the founder of the Middle East Forum. He is a prolific author and commentator, a columnist for the Washington Times. Daniel, I just read recently the one headline that apparently American troops and forces are being evacuated, and that's the term that is used, from Qatar. Is that an accurate report as far as you can gather?
It came from Reuters. Presumably it's accurate. The troops were, or at least some of the troops were evacuated back in the summer before the U.S. attack on Iranian nuclear installations. So it does suggest something along those lines. However, with Trump, you never know. So I hesitate to predict what the American actions will be.
What do you think when President Trump threatens that he is going to hit Iran and hit them very hard if they actually kill demonstrators? And so far they've killed at least 2,000 demonstrators of the number that I've seen. Is that about right?
The numbers range from 500 to 20,000. So substantial number, but it's hard to verify.
Okay, so
what does Trump mean by it? Well, again, who knows? Can I tell you what I hope for rather than try and predict what he will do?
Certainly.
Since that is beyond my capabilities. I think it's important that we be an auxiliary to the Iranian people. We help them. We provide them with internet access. We provide them with money. We provide them with a platform to get their ideas out. We help them perhaps even with arms. But we leave the fundamental work of changing the regime to them. it's their show, and we are actors on the side. We are supporting cast. That's what I hope for.
Does that include a starring role for the most recent member of the Pahlavi family, the young Shah, as he sometimes is called, the son of the former Shah?
Certainly meeting him in the Oval Office would be one thing that they would be supporting and helpful. I think it's critical that there be a single leadership and not fractious leadership. When Khomeini came in 1979, he was the single leader, and he took over, and it was very clean. There was no internal fighting. Should there be internal fighting, it could turn into a civil war. So I'm encouraged to see the ascent of the Shah, Reza Pahlavi, the would-be Shah. His support had mainly been in the West until not too long ago. Now we're seeing crowds in Iran with his name, calling out his name and showing the flag of Iran under the Pahlavi dynasty. So let's hope that and he's a good person. Let's hope that there's a coalescence behind him.
Have you met him?
Yes.
And it's fairly safe to say this would be a wonderful thing for the state of Israel, would it not, if he comes to power in Iran?
State of Israel, many other states as well. Yes, absolutely. Iran has been the great torment of Israel. Not just Iran itself, but supporting Hezbollah, supporting Hamas, supporting the Houthis, and many others as well. Yes, Iran has been, from day one, the first visitor to Khomeini's Iran, the first foreign minister, the first foreign visitor was Yasser Arafat. And that was a signal that the Islamic Republic of Iran is going to do everything it can to destroy Israel.
What do you make of the fact that the support from China and Russia has not been particularly enthusiastic when it comes to the current dilemma of the Ayatollah Khamenei rule in Iran?
Well, in Russia's case, it's easy to explain. Russia doesn't have the means anymore to help its allies. This became first apparent with Armenia, and then with Syria, and then with Venezuela, and now with Iran, and who knows what's next, Cuba, Colombia. It doesn't have the means. It's got a major debilitating war on its hands. China is more interesting. The Chinese, for example, signed a $400 billion deal over 25 years with Iran. China in South America has been very energetic about seeking resources. But I guess the Chinese calculation is that however antagonistic their relationship with the United States, still we are so large a market for them. And for example, Iran is so small a market. What is $20 billion a year compared to the trillion plus with the United States, that they've decided not to antagonize us and not to become really engaged. I guess, it's speculation, but it is something I'm surprised how passive the Chinese government has been in all these various scenarios.
Now, is some of the hanging back by some of our rival powers, does that come from the unpredictability of President Trump's leadership? So many people have expressed surprise at the brief and very successful invasion of Venezuela. Has that helped to intimidate both the leaders of Iran and the Russians and the Chinese?
I think so. Having a cowboy in the White House does amplify American policy. One thinks the contrast between Biden and Trump, and Biden was so passive. One felt American power was going down the drain. And now there's this assertion of American power that is working. In part, it has nothing to do with Trump, the success of the American military. But in part, it does have to do with Trump and his unpredictability, his scariness. And so everybody's wary.
Okay.
Neither you nor are fans of the president, but we have to acknowledge that this is a form of American power.
Okay, this does not include on your part some optimism about a potential struggle against Denmark to seize Greenland. That I assume you think would be a profound mistake.
You assume correctly. And I am hoping that this is merely a negotiating tactic of intimidation and so forth. But no, I cannot imagine and would be appalled if American troops were to accost Greenland. I mean, just appalling. Yeah, it's the end of NATO. Yeah.
And what about Cuba? What about Canada, our other 51st state?
I'm laughing because what else can we do? Well, Canada is laughable. I mean, it's just obviously words. But Cuba is a very serious situation. And the Cuban regime is a bit like the Iranian one. It's archaic. Cuba's 1959. Iran is 1979, so 20 years older. But few people are now around who were there before. And there's a determination on the part of the regime to stay in power and presumably use force. And so, who knows? But being 90 miles off of the coast of the United States does make it somewhat different. And having a very vocal Cuban political lobby in this country does make a difference. So I think as Marco Rubio put it, he would be scared if he were in the government in Havana.
There's all kinds of reasons to feel scared. Concerning Iran, do you believe the protesters, the people in the streets, represent an Iranian majority?
Yes. My estimate is that over the past few years, 85% of the Iranian people are against the regime. Now, it's not 85% on the streets, but it is a very large number. And they do seem to represent a very substantial cross-section of the Iranian population.
Well, let us hope, as you have been in the past, that you are correct in that summary. That's Daniel Pipes. His most recent commentaries are linked to our website at michaelmedved.com. Meanwhile, President Trump claims that Minnesota is mine. How are things going in Minnesota? And with that new proclamation that says that all funding will be cut off to states that allow sanctuary cities, we will get to this and more of the controversies that afflict and excite this greatest nation on God's green earth.